You're welcome. I appreciate the reach and the opportunity just to share whatever I can with people who are trying to achieve.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, could you describe a little bit about the uh, inspiration and what exactly you guys are trying to do? Because I have a feeling, well, some people maybe not haven't heard of it or aren't familiar with that. So, could you describe a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we are, I mean, I'll just kind of start with where this all kind of began. It began a very long time ago when I was doing I had another startup and we were focused in the golf space and I was spending a lot of time with executives from CBS television, Fox television, and I came to see that they just had no context or belief that their next frontier was going to be digital,
Okay.
and that they had all this content that they could actually optimize if they did it right. I then when our company crashed, that was back in the 2000s, which shows you how long I've been in this tech space.
Like,
Um, and then I went and worked in the media space, not even digital back then. It was really just media, television, worked for UPN, Fox, Univision, Cox Media, worked with NBC. And the short of it is I just spent a lot of time educating them about digital assets,
yeah.
and how they should transition to that. And it was an uphill battle the whole way.
Okay.
I launched the first that is known of the first internet rewards based program for television via Fox
Okay.
television. Great success. Made $750,000 total in the small first quarter it launched, which was a lot of money. Then found me in digital, extremely big money in digital.
Yeah.
And then I got fired like 2 weeks later, which was kind of
Oh,
fascinating. But what I did get was a brand and an opportunity to kind of launch 451 Degrees, which was a company that was focused on helping media companies kind of transition to how they were going to optimize content. Um, and I also had a vision of how it was going to be that people could find, identify, and memorize or recall things that were content driven.
okay.
So started consulting. That's what we did as a big part. And then I started working on, I'm not a coder by trade. I've learned everything when it comes to the engineering frameworks and how things work self-taught.
Yeah.
There was no real, when I went to college, it wasn't really a CSCE program.
Okay.
So I jumped in and then started doing some patent framework and architecture. And we built a product that is called Graffiti. And
Okay.
what we are focused on is creating large language models that come from digital content. And mostly we focus on e-commerce and kind of media companies where the information around the content is as valuable as the content itself, if not more so. And then
Okay.
we take and process all this information and create keywords for everything from content recommendation, content identification through SEO, keywords for anything that they are looking to have be part of the efforts to optimize and then um, uh, optimize and create money or value around their product offerings. We do this dynamically. So as things change, as storylines change, we're able to pull in other sources of information or news that are related to that or products that are related to that.
Uh-huh.
All of this was something no one had been doing, no one had thought about. Um, Currently, everyone knows AI.
Yep.
This was over 15 years ago. I've got 5 issued patents on this.
Yep.
We've been trying to create, and we've built models where we could get a few three legs of a four-legged table that would be there, and the fourth leg would always be wobbly, and it was kind of tough for us to kind of get lift. And part of that
Uh-huh.
was just a doubt on like how can this really work, or is AI really something that why do I need this? But
Uh-huh.
today, um, to our somewhat misfortune, there's an awareness because into our space steps Microsoft, Google, Facebook, X, everybody. And now everyone wants it. And those large language models that they built, they're billion-dollar machines. We were kind of building smaller models for people to work and elevate them up their own self. And that's kind of become a big shadow in the room because everyone's looking at the big five, so to speak, to really help them get what they want. I think that there's a big need for companies to start to think about how their content isn't just licensed, which is the new focus. Like companies like Reddit and these media companies are getting agreements that are big numbers, $30 million for access to their site. And they feel like they've kind of gotten in front of what was the first wave of web problems. But in truth, I think that they're still missing the part of what does it mean for them? How do they
Okay.
operate their own content internally, getting the purpose out of the machines that they've basically leased to them. So that's where we are. I guess that's a kind of a big, long answer on a very broad question, but tell me what else you want to
Sure,
know.
sure. And given that challenge, like, what do you feel like is the right direction for you to take in order to actually get them to understand, like, either your value or just the value of something like similar? Like, how do you fix that? Because right, these big five are taking much of the attention. Like, how do you go about fixing that potentially?
Well, that's our big riddle as a
Okay.
long brand, long-winded startup, right? Is
Yep.
we are old as it comes in this space. So some people look at us and be like, well, why haven't you gotten there yet? And it's
Yeah.
because there's still a misunderstanding of how this really can work. So that's what we're trying to figure out. We've been more or less quiet since a lot of this happened. A lot of other things have kept the business from going forward that are out of our control. And that's what I'll say to all entrepreneurs is nothing, even when you're right, it doesn't mean it's going to work. It doesn't mean that people are going to say yes. We've been in meetings with some of even these big, I've had meetings with Amazon that they, offer to buy the IP right away, and that was years ago.
Yeah.
That didn't get us right. That didn't get us money. But we've been in meetings with Facebook where they're like, yeah, we're okay, but now they're doing it. So, you've still got to find your way. And so for us right now, it's solving that riddle. How do we get some client or some entity or vertical that we know we can create sort of what is a complement to what they're trying to do with AI on a macro scale to where they're really focused on how are we doing this to help ourselves on a day to day. And that is our latest business riddle that we're hopeful to be able to get through. But again, it's week to week on how you're surviving.
Yeah, for sure. And what have been how do you what have been the most effective as far as going through and educating people like on your solution? Like, because right, people don't, don't get me wrong, but people aren't super familiar with what exactly it is that you do. And so, like, how do you go about educating them on that process?
I mean, that's just the same old grind. You've got to knock on doors and
Yep.
try and find people. And right now we're in a position of like, why do I need you? I've
Yeah.
got APIs from Anthropic. I've got APIs from OpenAI. I've got all these things I can do, and we're building our own team. Or I've got this, and it's like, okay, well, there's another part of this. It's really just selling the service of the intellect we have, the experience we have, and kind of a unique lane that we have. So
Okay.
that's the challenge. But there's no right way. I'll say this. I've been invited to, and I've been a part of some of the biggest conferences. We were a finalist at Web Summit, which was a huge exposure. And that exposure is fleeting. You might get a few people that want to talk to you, but at the end of the day, if you can't get in front of somebody and really show them all, again, as I like to say, the four legs of the table, then you're
Yeah.
not going to get anywhere. So, and that comes with conversations and frustrations.
Frustration on what front?
You can give someone the perfect answer to what they say they want, and they're still going to
Yep.
maybe deny you, or say they don't have the budget or the time, and
Yeah.
that's difficult. Or they have this one partner that you have to log into, as far as with a agreement. Like for us, part of it was in ad tech, there's a handful of big DSPs, and they don't necessarily want their model changed. Even if you're telling them that this will create more opportunity, it's like they've got something that's working. Don't, or they want to do it themselves. That's the other thing you'll find is that you bring an idea to a person who's already embedded, and they
Mhm.
literally will have a conversation once the call's over and say, well, we can do this.
Yeah.
So that's kind of some of the frustrations of what you try to overcome.
For sure. Yeah, and I think it's this isn't a perfect analogy, but they tried to launch some sort of dating app where people like put in exactly what it is that they want and try and like make them find the perfect match. But like it didn't actually work because people at the end of the day weren't good at understanding what even themselves want. I'm not, does that make sense?
I mean,
Like,
it does. I mean, I
yep.
think in the world of business relationships and partnerships, there's a lot of that. Like there's got to be a likeness, right? There's also a lot of what you said. People don't know what they don't know or want at
Yeah.
times. They can say they want something, but at the end of the day, if there's effort or risk to get there, that's scary and they're going to walk backwards. So to your point of how do you get in front or what's the way to get the brand and the company out there? It's trust, and
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times people have told me, I can't believe you're still doing this. And our success has never gotten to the heights it should have or I thought it would have, but we're
Okay.
alive. And that's the way I look at it as well, is there's a lot of things that take a lot of time to get there. If we can find just one lane in this massive revolution, or not revolution, I shouldn't say this, but because it's not that, it's in this massive new marketplace
Yes.
that's finally come together, we're going to be okay. If there's a need for us to go be put inside of a company to show how this works. That's really what all of those of us that have been working a long time want to have. It's just to see it go. That's the other
Yeah.
thing. I try and tell people, I work at different universities with young entrepreneurs, and one of the things I always tell them is don't get too arrogant with what your goals are versus just achieving and having something succeed, because that's sometimes the greatest gift you give to yourself and to those that invested in you, because
Mhm.
there's always, and you have your perfect idea that you think, but once you've done something, your opportunity to do other things just exponentially grow. And I've learned that from other friends that have had success ahead of me, that now are building their third, fourth, fifth company, and it's much easier for them, because
Yeah.
success breeds money, and money breeds strength.
Yeah. And then it's sort of this whole loop again.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
If you're an
And
entrepreneur, once someone has become an entrepreneur, once they've really made the full commitment, this that you're going to do it again. It's
yep.
just because you're a unique person, you're a unique character that just likes to do that.
Yeah.
So, just have faith in yourself, and remember that very few companies achieve the success that everyone kind of wants you to aspire to, or you yourself think of.
Mhm.
Um, and too often, I will say, even in my own decision making, looking backwards, you don't see that you could have taken an off ramp that would have gotten you a much better future.
Mhm. And at the same time, you have to be careful not to live in the past, because what is the past? The past is depression. The future is anxiety. But the key is like, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at this. Honestly, I think I spend too much time in the future. But the key is like, how much can you be present? And I think that's where you foster the most growth.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I also think that what's important, no matter where you are, is just be measured.
In what way?
It's balance. It's like, when you're looking at your mistakes from the past, don't dwell on them, and don't let them keep you down or have investors give you grief about what you didn't do.
Mhm.
Just do your best, right? Be measured and do your best. And then in the present, think about what you're seeing, think about what you're doing. And when it comes to your future, realize that very rarely, again, back to the numbers, very
Yeah.
rarely are you going to have the success that you can dream about or think about or put onto an investment, portfolio or request for what you're doing with your business plan. And
Mhm.
that's okay. Just keep it, keep yourself balanced.
For sure. For sure. And what do you think is happening in the market that might make it more difficult for you to differentiate, or maybe some things that are making it easier for you specifically to differentiate or like operate in?
Well, when you've got OpenAI and Microsoft, when you got Anthropic, which is Amazon, when you've got Google, which is Gemini, and you've got X and Facebook kind of doing their own.
Mhm.
And they've got the resources that just it's no different than if I've explained this to our investors in the past. It's like, okay, we were a small web hosting company that knew we could do a lot, and then
Yeah.
Amazon started doing this, right? And it's like, yeah, every small hosting company was just gutted, but there's still hosting companies out there that serve a purpose to certain companies, and we just have to find that way or that lane that we maintain what we do, because just because Amazon was able to step into that position and dominate it, right? And then thereafter, so did Google, and so did Microsoft with what they've done. That doesn't mean that there isn't people who are still have a place and can do things that are useful to companies.
Mhm.
And the other part of it is the good news is when you have those companies that become your point of like, if you're not with this, you're never going to get it.
Mhm.
There's validation, I guess, when you have that kind of money being thrown into a space. And
Mhm.
for me, it's just finding how I can raise the phoenix on what we were doing. And the
Okay.
other thing I think that I wish would change, but hasn't changed, is the value and the respect of patents and
Okay.
intellectual property. Because in the world of technology, no one cares about patents. They just don't. I mean, they say
Yeah.
they're starting to now, but I'll tell you, from having them, you can go to the biggest companies in the world, and there's tons of them that run me over, and it costs $2 million to really, I'm just kind of throwing a number out there to go after one of these companies with anything that's going to matter. And
Yeah.
it's nice to have it, but don't rely on it. It's a
Yeah.
great backstop, but it's not your first thing you do.
For sure. For sure. No, and I have spoken with quite a few tech guys, and I've heard that before. Unfortunate as it is, um, but I guess when it comes to growing the business, like, what are the most important metrics that you're focusing on to know that you're sort of moving in the right direction? Like, what are some of those things you look at?
Well, at this point, and we've been, like I said, running kind of incognito for a while now, as we
Okay.
kind of like once ChatGPT launched, it changed everyone, I think, in the AI space that was a small company. Some
Yeah.
were really celebrating, but some of us really realized like, oh God, this changes everything.
Yeah.
Um, so success for us is kind of like rebuilding or deciding if we can continue to build, right? It's identifying how we can be helpful.
Hmm.
And if we can't find that answer here in 2025, then we've done our best.
Yeah.
And that's all we can do. But that's where we're at, and that's a unique position to be in. It's not like we're a company we've had spurts of growth and revenue and all that stuff, but we have to find something that's going to allow us to be unique, to be
Hmm.
reliable, and to become a dependency that's
Yeah.
that's powerful and complements what's going on in the market with the big giants, because
Hmm.
that's the only way success comes, and that's the only measure of us right now is that path. It's not the power of a new contract just yet. It's how we're
Okay.
going to make it.
Okay. For sure. And direction is sort of important. Like, what do you guys want to achieve in 2025? Like, what are the main things? Is it just finding the direction? Is there anything else that you guys are really have on the docket list? When you look back, you're going to be like, man, I'm super happy we achieved this in 2025.
For us, for 2025, it's just integration, and we'll do it any
Mhm.
way we can. We'll do it where we can go to a media company like a Tegna or a Nexstar, which is struggling because they're a linear TV model, and they're trying to figure out how they can, they're constantly kind of fish out of watering on like, oh, we have to have a digital presence. And if we can go in there and help them kind of find this as a consultant that has a product offering or a roadmap that gives them that, that's a win. If we can do that with any of the other traditional digital media companies, that's a win. Um, and that's kind of where we're at. It's just how do we get this in the wild and then let it create its own growth.
And what's the one thing you have to get right in order to make sure that that growth is achieved?
We have to get trust right. We have to have people recognize that we do something that's unique and that we have, the other thing that's happened is
Mhm.
now like I can follow companies, and this is kind of a unique approach, but it's changed my whole model. I used to
Sure.
source who I wanted to talk to by what I saw in their business, right? So digital media companies, you got a lot of content, you got a lot of traffic, you got a lot of comments. How can I help you?
Yeah.
Now I'm looking at LinkedIn to see where there's job opportunities that they're looking for, somebody who can
Okay.
manage AI or do whatever. And the goal is like, hey, we can come in and like help you get through this piece, right? But what I'm finding is the talent rush into this space is like nothing that's been seen in a long time, because
Okay.
everyone wants technology before, but now everyone wants AI in their
Yeah.
title, no matter what
Yeah.
they're doing. They want that. So we have to sort through and kind of elevate ourselves away from that, and separate ourselves, meaning like we've been doing this a long long time and we can help you. So
Mhm.
that's what we hope to be able to kind of craft and find as our space. And also it's a unique way for us to kind of think about how can we get into a business and help them.
Mhm. Okay. And I guess what would you say, and I guess we could maybe end on this, like what would you say to someone who's in you but 5 years ago? Like what would you say to them in order to maybe not make the same mistakes or be able to progress? Like what would you say there?
Well, I first say to anybody, you're going to make mistakes, and mistakes define how you find success. And learning from your mistakes can only be helpful if you let them be. I've made a lot of mistakes with this business. I've missed some obvious opportunities. I've sometimes done things, and of course, I can came and begin to identify one that I want to focus on.
Sure.
But I will tell anyone that's getting into this world of being an entrepreneur and most directly into the AI space right now is that there's so much that we don't see today that's going to happen. And your idea, don't don't hold on, don't grip it too hard, right? Because then that's exhausting and that's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
Have enough of an understanding that not everything's going to work and not
Mhm.
everyone's going to get it. And it's finding out how those problems can be solved or
Yep.
cured. And don't let yourself become too focused on what you think. Try and
Mhm.
figure out what it is, how you can fit.
Absolutely. Strong beliefs loosely held. That's the way to go. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Pat, very much appreciate your time here. Where can people find you if they're wanting to reach out?
I'm on Twitter at Pat Giblin. You can, the website's 451degrees.com. I'm happy to, connect with people via those modalities.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's best. Just you can find me, and if you find me, I'm here to help. That's what I like to do for people when I can.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.